Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the VVA podcast. My name is Leila Oresme.
And I'm Cristina Tumino.
And today is the episode number 4 entitled Patriarchy. What's the deal?
Yes, today we're going to talk about patriarchy. And as we normally do now, we looked for the meaning in the dictionary online. And I'm going to read it. It says, patriarchy is a system of society or government in which the father or eldest male is head of the family and descent is reckoned through the male line. And then there's another one saying a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. I find quite interesting how the meaning we can find in dictionary can be sometimes quite different to the etymological meaning in some way, because it's written by someone. So yeah. It's like the connotation that gets and the meaning it gets throughout time.
It evolves and it changes, and sometimes that's actually done on purpose to make us kind of forget the original meaning of stuff, which is actually why we go into the etymological meaning to uncover what it originally means, because that still has so much power, and sometimes it can give us clues to why it actually exists, for example. And I think it's important for us to actually talk about patriarchy, because at the moment it has been very demonized, and we basically want to uncover whether that is rightful or whether there is actually some positives to it.
The etymological meaning is actually, apparently seems to come from Greek, and it means the rule of the father. So it's the rule of the father. Quite interestingly different than when, as definition in a dictionary, it specifies that is a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it.
It is very different, isn't it? It makes me think of religions, how they would call God the Father, so that was kind of where it comes from, because God is the most powerful thing and he was the father. Obviously, we kind of know that God is not a man in the sky. It is much bigger than that, and we had to kind of put a gender on God in order for people to just understand it a bit better and to be able to conceptualize it. But it's obviously much bigger than that, but it shows a lot, why we call God the Father. And I think it's because it gives that kind of feeling of authority, like we must listen to what God tells us, because it's the highest authority, it's like our father. And also it suggests that it's actually a good thing, because a father is also loving, right? And so is God. But
it gives the idea as well of as you were saying, authority, so kind of almost a bit of feeling that's the kind of thing.
Everyone kind of fears authority, and actually that helps them to follow it, because if you don't fear something, then there is no consequences of not listening to what they kind of try and impose on you. But there is,
although I think, sorry to interrupt, I think it's more shouldn't really be about fear per se, but about the natural law of order, because as it says, the etymological meaning is about the rule of the father. So it's like a father has a rule, and it gives me the idea of this masculine energy, where that we have talked in the past, that is a bit more about the mind and order, that is actually opposite to the feminine energy, that is more about feelings and chaos. So it's about bringing that necessary kind of
structure, isn't it? It's a structure in order for things to kind of grow on. And we know that every society, every successful society has to have some kind of structure. It has to have order. And I think at the moment, a lot of people believe that any kind of order and structure is, imposing, that all of this is unnecessary and we just need to be free and flowing. But there is also like a balance that we need to have, because if we are all over the place, we're not actually grounded, and that can also be very dangerous. And we can actually see that in nature. So it's not just something that humans have made up out of thin air, but it's actually something that is present in in the animal kingdom, right? So we have like the alpha males, which is the strongest and the most competent male, which is the leader and has the responsibility of looking after the group of whatever animals they are. And we can kind of just see that everywhere. So it is inherent in us. It's not something we just made up. It's not something that men made up because they want to be powerful. It is actually natural. And the reason why that is because the masculine energy is the energy of mind. So very like strategic and thinking and organizing things. So it's like mind and order, whereas feminine is the opposite, which is feeling and chaos. And they need to work together in order to have this kind of balance in the society for it to grow and evolve in a proper way. So yeah, the masculine energy is very strategic, and which is why it is mainly men that are much more into things like strategizing, politics and governments, and the kind of like military stuff, protection, and also like building and architecture. It's a pattern. We don't really see many women working in labor, like hard labor, and carrying blocks of cement or whatever, because it's actually unhealthy for us. We are actually much more fragile. So I think it's important to realize the positives of this kind of structure. It really does for us a lot. It builds the whole world that we live in right now.
And I think it's more because, as we were talking about energy, the male energy, this masculine energy, normally men, biologically speaking, like physically speaking, normally are the one that have more of this male energy. It doesn't mean that there are no women that cannot have more masculine energy within them, and that's why they have these kind of behaviors and characteristics and can be a bit more like strategic as a man, but still is normally speaking, generally speaking, it's more something that belongs to men rather than women, and it's necessary, as you were saying, to bring that kind of balance. And and we do need structure. Structure is important. We need it. We need, as you were saying, to build in architecture and stuff. We need structure to kind of have these. I actually have Jordan Peterson talks about chaos and order in terms of that you need to be with both feet, like one foot in one side and another foot in the other side. So you need to be in order in some way in order to have a bit of stability and structure and understand your way forward in some way. But the other foot needs to be as well into chaos, because you need to have the ability to expand and grow and come out from that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, in order to grow, you need to go beyond whatever you are, but you still have to do it in for example, when we think about society and the rules we have in a society, the different laws, well, originally they were made to protect us from doing harmful things onto others and protect us from harmful people. So this is why we have things like laws, and this is why we have, for example, even things like you know, the age restrictions, right? For example, in UK, I know it's different in other countries. You cannot go clubbing, you cannot like drink, and unless you're 18 years or over. And many younger people don't really understand that. I didn't understood it personally. I always wanted to go out when I was 16, but now in hindsight I kind of see how dangerous that was, and that I wasn't mature enough to actually look after myself in those kinds of environments and situations. And obviously, you know, luckily nothing has happened, but now when I look back I can kind of see how dangerous that was. And these things are there to protect us. They're not there to necessarily control us. Obviously, not all laws are like that, but it's important to not try to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and actually realize that kind of dismantling the whole system is not going to be, no, it's not going to do any good for us. It's actually going to cause us much harm.
Mm-hmm. But I think as well, there can be, as in anything, when there is too much of something, it becomes a problem. So if you have too much structure, too much order, too much of this masculine energy, and masculine energy is not just about, yeah, the mind strategic, can be more like cold because it doesn't have the emotion side much into it, but it can become quite easily corrupt in some way, because when it's too when it's a lot about controlling, because that's the rules and stuff is about being in control. Now when we talk about discipline, self-discipline, is about being able to be in control of yourself and control of things, and that's a good thing. However, when it's too much, then it can become corrupt, and that's why governments can be so corrupt as well, because of these it's like getting to the extreme of
exactly. I mean, power corrupts, and it has the potential to corrupt every single one of us. So we tend to see people change when they get power. There might be actually very compassionate people, and the moment they have power, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to control it, and they become corrupt as a result of that. But I think it's important to know that it's not really practical to just try and take that power away from people, because that's never really going to work in a sense. I think it's important to actually start from it's better to avoid the problem than to treat the problem. So we all have to control ourselves and have that self-discipline and work on an individual level, and realize how power can corrupt us personally, because we don't know, like anyone can actually become someone powerful somewhere down the line. And so we need to be ready for that. We need to be ready how we're going to control that power that we have. And like I said, we can find ourselves in a situation where we have this power and we have these urges to be quite dictatorial and tyrannical even, whereas before we would have been almost kind of in a denial that that would never be us.
Yeah, I think actually, because power, there is nothing wrong with power. Power is just power, is there. Like you use power to move stuff, to do things, to I don't know, to action things. So power is just there, is how we use it. And I think, as you were saying, I completely agree. It needs to be more about working on a very personal level, because it's more about learning how to use that power within you in terms of controlling yourself and learning what is good to do, what's not good to do, how to, I don't know, even with silly things in terms of even when you know you cannot eat something and then you just go and eat it. That means that you are not in control of yourself. And this is a little example, but the more you grow into society and integrate into society and start to exert in some way your power, it can be either at work, I don't know, depends on your position, and you grow into the ladder of the success, etc. And the more you use the power externally, more to control others, and you're not even able to control yourself. I think that's where it becomes very, how do you say, it can become very dangerous. Yeah, that's the word, dangerous, because that's why when you were talking about becoming tyrannical and all this stuff, because power can get to a level where then it's not even you who is dealing or controlling or helping, or even, it's like the energy, the masculine energy leads completely rather than even your own self. It takes over the negative sides. If it
I think that power actually comes hand in hand with strength. It's like you have to think of it as if it's like this ball of energy, and in order to work with it, you need to be strong enough to actually, know how to manage it, because it can destroy you. And I think that often what happens is people don't put in the necessary inner work and don't have the self-discipline and don't have that inner strength. And so when they get power, it completely destroys them. It destroys their character, and it destroys their soul, and the kind of, their urges that whether it's like emotions or, like these negative thoughts and these, this animalistic urges to control others come up. And so we need to have the strength in order to, restrain them and, work with power from more of a soul level, from more of a strong level. And that way we can actually use that power for good.
And I think it starts everything from the family, from when you are actually parenting at home, because parenting at home, family is another kind of structure of, in some way, can be seen as a kind of hierarchy where there is somebody who is more in kind of control, although mother and father, especially nowadays, that's the way it works. They're more kind of both on the same line, while in the past, it was more as well, the male was the one in charge.
Head of the family, the breadwinner.
Yeah, and then the woman, so there were like kind of two different roles in some way. So the man was the one at the head of this hierarchy. That's why patriarchy, and it was starting from family up to the government and stuff. And then and his role was to protect the family, to bring that kind of structure, to bring that discipline that was actually a bit more almost authoritarian rather than, well, in some way, but not authoritarian in a negative. I don't see it as a negative thing. I don't see it as a how can I explain? It's more like giving that kind of structure that is needed. Then, of course, there could be fathers that were quite compassionate anyway. It's just about giving that order, that structure, and that mental, strategic skills that are necessary to manage a family. And then the woman was the one providing with all the other skills of the feminine energy. That means compassion and love and nurturing and biologically giving birth. So there was this kind of separate rules, like everybody had a specific role.
And I like what you said about, like family, like the head of the family would manage the family, because I like to see family as a kind of business where you only have one boss, but this boss is responsible for managing the whole thing. So, he's the one that has to make sure that everyone is fed and is being looked after. He goes to work and brings in the money, and he has to take care of the family, has to make sure he can afford the bills and to provide, this kind of home for the family. Whereas the mother has, this kind of like a secondary role, but that doesn't mean it's less important, because she has a role in the home. She's kind of like, the lady of the home. So she has to manage on a, so she's like the manager, you know, like the father is the boss and she's the manager, so she manages things on a slightly slower scale, and that actually, you know, takes away from her the responsibility of, you know, having to make very hard decisions that can potentially, you know, put the family in a difficult situation, because women actually naturally don't deal with stress as well as men do. So biologically, men are better at making hard decisions because these things are too stressful for women. We can get really easily overwhelmed, especially because we tend to multitask a lot more than men do. So we tend to get really overwhelmed, and the stress is actually affecting our hormones, and we can, you know, actually become physically sick, you know, mentally and physically sick when we have too much stress. Whereas men, they can deal with that a lot better, which is kind of the reason for these structures. It's actually biological, which goes back to, you know, the natural law of order and the animal kingdoms and things like that.
Although I think if I'm correct, what you mean as well is not that women don't have the ability to make decisions or important decisions, because anyway, raising a child as well has lots of important choices to make and things. So it's not about women not being able to make decisions, but and this happens with even if you're a woman or a man, but the masculine energy is the one that normally brings that kind of clarity of thought, because it's more using the mind, compared to women that is more about feeling, in terms of maybe to clarify better. So for instance, a feeling could be fear. Yeah. So for instance, as a mother, you can be fearful of your child, that happens something, and then you can go and fall over somewhere, and then as a mother you will be, oh my God, it's better if my child doesn't go there or doesn't do this, and then you can be in that constant fear. But the problem is when it's fear the thing that is leading, in reality you can actually block growth for you and for your child. So that's why when you need that mental ability as a woman, you can have, of course, the mental ability. I think what we're saying here is not the women are not able completely, but in a structure of a family, more naturally speaking, if we follow the natural law of order, men are the one that it's like working both together, like
and I think it's important to kind of, you know, realize that we are human beings, and this is what makes us special, the ability to kind of go onto the opposite side and then come back. But there is a kind of default energy that we have, and this default is actually, you know, our DNA that has evolved over millions of years, and we have to kind of honor that natural, you know, biology. We have this machine that we are given, and that doesn't mean that women can't make decisions and men are incapable of feeling. That's not what we are saying. We are saying of the kind of default energy that we are infused with, and of course we can go to the other side, and actually we can do really well by, you know, doing actions of the, you know, traditionally opposite sex. So
and what I was thinking, because now before we were talking about how things were in the past, no? Then we had these men, they were the one in charge, the one that were doing the whole the hard work, and then coming back home, and then women were taking care of children and the house and etc. And nowadays things have changed, and this role of women of being doing at home now is seen more like a not having the opportunity to grow and develop as a person. Like it's more seen like as a they are not having the right to become, I don't know, the CEO of a company. Yeah. And therefore women have started to, well, things have changed anyway in society after the two world wars, and women are starting to work and become more independent. But I think what is happening now, I don't know what you think about this, but I think it's more about having unrealistic expectations in some way, because it's like women need to be able to raise their children, take care of the house, and have a career. And men have their career, but they need to support women at home and with the children. But at the end, what happens, and I talk about my experience with families I work with, that women then kind of, there is something they don't do well at the end, because it's impossible to be doing everything, like being able to, it's not, I'm not saying it's not impossible. Of course, women can multitask and they can take care of the house.
It's not optimal, you know.
Yeah.
I think parenting is like a full-time job.
Perfect.
And I think this is what people don't understand. They think that they can have a career and then have children at the same time. And we're not saying that this can't be accomplished, but it's just not the optimal way of doing things. And I think the idea of a woman being at home and being a homemaker and being a mother is kind of like demonized, and we don't think of these women as worthy, you know. We think like, why would she allow something like this to be done to her, you know? And it's seen as like a really negative thing, but everyone is different, and there is plenty of women that would so much rather take that role. And let's not forget that bringing up children is one of the most honorable jobs a woman can do. There is nothing more honorable than bringing up children. No career, no nothing compares to, you know, introducing a child into this world and doing that as a full-time job. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think that we need to kind of, you know, get rid of the stigma around women who want that, because there is nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And there is nothing wrong with a father who would prefer to, you know, take care of the family and not want the woman to work, you know. It's so there's this whole idea of women actually not being worthy if they want to be homemakers and, you know, just be mothers. And it is a full-time job, and it does require a lot of work from the side of the woman. And there is this whole stigma around women who actually want that, and I think we need to kind of get rid of that, because there's nothing more honorable than being a mother, than welcoming a child into this world and, you know, teaching the child things about the world. You know, there is no career that compares.
No, but I actually think, and it's so important, that I have the feeling that many parents nowadays, because they just follow, you know, the pressure from society, they just become parents because it's time, you get married and you have parents, you become parents, or you're living together, why not having a child? But they don't really understand what are the responsibilities that come with it. So what happens is that parents, a mom have a child, but of course has a career, otherwise she feels that it's not worth it, or that you need the income, you need as well the money to support the whole family. And then what you do, you start to, you have your child, and then you put your child into nursery. And then you actually give these child and almost the education, most part of the education of the child, to a third party who takes care of this, and that means schools and all this stuff. And in reality, when I say that it's not good that you are performing well your job, whatever role you decide to take in the family, the fact that you choose to raise a child, you actually should be really raising the child in some way, like not just giving that part of the responsibility to schools, because that's one of the reasons I think why society nowadays is where it is, where many children and I mean now even young adults live, they have depression, or they have had problems even thinking of suicide and stuff. Apparently, the percentage of people, young teenagers, they think to do that is very high. It's very high, and it means because they don't have that structure they should have in a family, where there is the man that gives that kind of structured discipline in some way, or anyway, this masculine energy, and the feminine energy that is there nurturing and supporting. And the fact that parents don't do that, I think, is valuing these different roles and actually doing them at the fullest. That's so important. And what I'm saying is that you, as a mother, there are different stages that are so important when raising your child. And the most important age, anyways, from 0 to 6, 7 years old, for my experience and my understanding in my studies. And if, as a mother or family, you're not there fully supporting the growth of your child in all areas of development, in those ages, especially those ages, your child, you compromise the future of your child, like the way they make relationships, the way the child even use creativity and self-confidence. And it's so important that, I'm not saying that all women needs to be mothers, but what I'm saying is that
if you do choose to be a mother, there is a responsibility.
Yeah, it's like you're doing a job. So you choose, what job do you want to do? I want to be a mother. And you can, of course, still have your life, and doesn't mean you cannot have at all a career, but that needs to become your priority. Like the career is more like a hobby in some way.
Yeah, I don't think a child's health and development should be compromised, especially because, you know, we see that children don't have a good home life, and that will affect the school life as well. You know, the home life is the most important thing, and this is what a lot of people don't understand completely, that children learn from examples. So that if there is not a father figure in the house that is looking after the home, that is providing, and that has that kind of authority, the child does not have the example of that. So that will, like you said, affect their whole life and the way they make relationships, friendships, and everything, their work life. It will affect it because they will not have that father figure. And the same goes for a mother figure. We need that mother nurturing love of our mom to you know, teach us almost like what love is, right? Because if we don't have that, then again, all areas of our life will be affected by that. And of course, like you said, not every single woman needs to be a mother. Like, that's not what we are saying, because there are plenty of women that don't feel ready, or perhaps they just don't want to be a mother. They are, you know, they want to pursue a career. But we also have to remember that there is a way of doing that, while honoring our female.
Because I think we're all different, we're all unique, we're all different. So what does it mean that we're all different? It means that there are women that, I'm talking about women, of course, because biologically speaking, we are the ones that procreate. So there are women that, according to their personality and skills and competencies, are more useful for society, but as well for themselves, because everything is about you. So you, if you develop your potential skills, and those are maybe to actually be more a strategic role, where you are more of the mind, for instance, then you need to actually pursue that kind of path, because being at home and a mom brings only frustrations and problems for the child and for yourself. While instead, if you are more that kind of nurturing figure, that you naturally have the skills to support and grow a child, then that's what you should do, because that will bring you that feeling of fulfillment in some way, and you can carry on. Or the same if you're a nurse, because women don't necessarily have to have children. They can have be just other kind of, they can pursue that career in that sense. But what is so important, that's why it's so important to have self-knowledge, understand who you are, because when you understand who you are, then you can work on your potential skills and you can become competent for what God made you to be. So you need to be that kind of thing, that kind of role, that specific thing, and you will be great at it and you will love it as well, because that's what you were made to do. Exactly. And society will take the benefits from it, because you will be doing a good job, maybe raising a child that it becomes in the future whoever needs to be too. And because you're supporting the child to understand who the child really is as a person, as an individual when grows up, then you will be doing your job. You're fulfilled by your job. So there is nothing wrong by thinking. I think the problem here is when people start to, as you say, stigmatize things and think that everything is like that. So women should be working and pursuing a career and being at home.
Women at home are suffering, and it's like, you know, it's not like that. And I think what it all, you know, essentially comes down to is self-knowledge. Do you know yourself enough to know what your destiny is, to know what your purpose in life is? Because for some, that purpose, like we said, might be homemaking. For some women, their purpose is to be a successful businesswoman. But there is also a way, like I said, we all have to honor our nature, our biology. We have to honor this default programming that we are born into. So if a woman wants to be a politician, for example, the fact that she has the interest of doing that and she is a woman, maybe that means that the world needs a bit of feminine influence in that area. So it is actually, you know, almost her purpose to provide that. So that doesn't mean she has to go and act like a man and be a man, because she's born a woman, but she has this interest, that calling that tells her that she needs to get into this particular area, this particular line of work, and, you know, use that kind of, learn how to be assertive and learn how to be a bit more masculine, but still bring that, you know, feminine influence. Because I think, you know, everything is kind of, you know, everything needs balance, right? And I think women tend to go into like go into work and they forget that they are women, you know, and this is where it can cause them to actually fall out of love with what they are doing, because they suppress their own, you know, like biology, their own feminine energy, and then that makes them suffer later on.
Yeah, and the same is with men. And the problem is when humans interfere in the natural order of things, in the natural law of things, that's when problems happen. Because if we follow, if naturally speaking, there is a hierarchy in things, and maybe patriarchy is because that's what we need, that kind of side to give that structure, yes, and then women have another natural role that is more about giving that kind of compassion and nurturing side, etc., etc. Then the more we follow that kind of natural role and proper competencies, like what you're naturally born with. So you naturally are born to, as a woman, to raise a child. Perfect. You need to follow that. You need to understand who you are, what are your interests, and how to do that. If you are a man, the same thing will be. And more naturally speaking, we allow this natural order of things to develop the way they are. I think the more there is harmony and things will go better.
Exactly.
So in some ways, more like being, we were talking about this as well, it's more as when you have this king that is normally the one on top of this patriarchy system. So the man, this masculine figure on top, ruling and strategically kind of leading. But I think as a natural thing, it's not just that there is a king, but there is as well a queen. It's more like, as we said in the yin and yang process, where you have, not process, philosophy, when you have the night and day, man and woman, bad and good. The same is king and queen.
Yeah, and we haven't really seen that much, have we? Because when we were talking about, just to fill you guys in, we were actually thinking about, you know, why hasn't things worked? Why have things become oppressive over time? And we came to this conclusion that maybe it's because our, you know, structure is incomplete. We don't see many societies that actually have a king and a queen ruling together. You know, we, for example, in England, we have the Queen, and other places have kings, but we don't see that togetherness of a king and a queen working together in order to, you know, provide the society with this order, but also this kind of, you know, more caring attitude, because men actually need the feminine energy to soften them and to kind of guide them away from that very tyrannical way of thinking and these very harsh behaviors. This is why men need women, and this is why it's important for the world and for women to be more feminine. The world needs feminine women, because a masculine woman is not necessarily going to, you know, soften a man down, and this is what men need. And like I said, we do not see that. We don't see that in our societies. I can't think of, you know, maybe there is some, but I can't think of any kingdoms where, you know, we have these two roles. And I think it's also important to highlight that a queen isn't a king, because right now there is this thing where women, you know, say they are queens, but actually what they are trying to do is they're trying to be kings, and that is not the same. A queen is not a female king. A queen is a queen, and she has these specific qualities to her that makes her special. And the same way goes for a king. A king is not a male queen. They are different, and they need to work together for things to run smoothly. And there needs to be this, you know, balance and this harmony of these two energies, because
we were talking before doing this podcast. We were actually saying, because in the past, I mean, for years and years and years, we always had predominantly men with the power to rule a country. So it's always been men, that in some way, as I said, is good, is important, because they give structure and they give that kind of thing, and they protect, and that's are all skills of the masculine energy. And we need that, we need this. However, the fact has been always just masculine energy, and that means men ruling, is incomplete. It's like it doesn't give what society really needs, because society is not just about men, but there are as well women. So men, they've been ruling all these years in reality, and because we said at the beginning that power corrupts. So when men when there is just about controlling and power and giving that structure, but then it becomes almost tyrannical, or anyway, not necessarily so extreme, but still quite overpowering in some way, too much structure, no, like in the military system, then it becomes too rigid, and it doesn't allow things to happen, or it becomes because we know the masculine energy is about anyway as well destruction in terms of death and destroying things, bring it to an end, and in order to grow again, to raise something new. And when it's too much masculine, then we need something to balance it out. And I think at the moment, we're having kind of going to the extreme where it's starting to be about feminine, about emotions and feelings and doing things according to what your feeling is telling you to do. And that's not good either. Like,
that's
if we see
too much chaos, and
yes, it's chaos, and that's actually maybe even worse for some aspects.
Yeah, I mean, with the too much male energy, we get a lot of war because the male is very competitive, and like I said, that it's dangerous from the point of wars and destruction, and too much tyrannical governments and things like that. But too much feminine energy brings a lot of confusion, and we see that in the world today. People are so confused. People don't know how to have relationships. They don't know how society should work. Everything is just based on feeling, and it's not, it might have good intention, but that's not good enough, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we need that logical side to understand whether something works or if it doesn't, because actually hierarchy naturally is based on competence, and Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot. So I would recommend watching some of his talks and reading some of his books about that. And he talks about how these things, for example, in a workplace, right, women are quite angry about the fact that there is so many men in these high positions in businesses and these different lines of work. And it is because these hierarchies are based on competence. It's not that the man came first and they made these rules and they don't want women in. It's just that when you go to extremes and you need extremely competent people, if it's in an area like, for example, IT or politics, naturally more men are going to be at those extremes. Whereas when we think about something a bit more feminine, like, for example, nursing and teaching and things like that, at the most extreme levels, the most competent people are going to be female. So it's not that there is this kind of misogyny against women. Obviously it does happen, but actually the whole hierarchy is based off competence. So I don't think it's right to employ employers just based on trying to have the workplace more diverse, because it's not going to make it more competent. It's just going to be picking people based on their gender, which is actually sexist in itself.
No, because I think that we are naturally, when we are born, we are already given the opportunity to be a specific person with specific skills, with specific qualities, okay? So if we allow, as we were saying before, the natural order of things to happen without the intervention of humans, and deciding we need a certain amount of men, we need a certain amount of women, we need a certain amount of gay, we need a certain amount of Black people. If we just allow naturally things to happen according to our skills, characteristics, etc., and we develop those, so that's why it's so important self-knowledge. The more we develop this naturally, we will naturally create a society that is efficient and it works at its maximum potential. Because and that's why patriarchy in the past has been for so long the one existing as a model, because it's as well a model that naturally forms itself to be the man, because of these skills and characteristics, to be the one in power. But there's nothing either sexist or wrong or discriminatory or anything about this. as far as we leave the natural things to happen and the natural competencies, then we will have a more efficient and even harmonic way of structuring society. And this kind of hierarchy will most probably maybe a patriarchy because it's more men, but again is I think the ideal is when we just allow this to happen. And I think it will become to a point where now, before it's been only kings in terms of men doing that. Now it's more like women saying, oh, it's because I need to be on top. But it's not again about you as a woman needed to be on top, but it's about you. Do you have the skills? Do you have the competency? Work on that.
Because there is a competition now, isn't there? There's a competition between men and women, and they're not wanting to work together. You know, women want to kind of take the power of men, whereas they need to realize that they have their own power that actually is in their femininity. They don't need to take men's power away in order to be powerful. They are powerful within themselves. And it's quite a difficult concept to grasp for some people, because when there is a lot of resentment built up and there is a lot of this kind of, you know, indoctrination to tell us that, you know, men are evil and patriarchy is all bad and it's all inherently, you know, just the worst thing that can happen and we need to dismantle it and just get rid of it completely. No, that is not the way to go. There is reason for all of this. There's a reason why society has evolved to where we are, and yes, it's not perfect, but we have to realize that we are still evolving. And like we said, we need to look back in the past and see, you know, what could have been improved and how we can solve it. So me and Christina thought that, you know, by having a king and a queen can actually help to solve some problems. So
a natural king and a natural queen, like not because we need a king and we need a queen, but because naturally, if we allow things to happen naturally, I think we will get to the point. It's like, you know how I say it, you know, when you have this you know, the volume thing in the, how do you call the stereo thing, and you have the moves in this way. So if you put the volume all on one side, it becomes so extreme that maybe you cannot even hear a sound. Yeah. If you move it on the other side, it can distort the sound that you cannot understand what is the sound about. So the key is to try to put it in the middle so you can actually listen, enjoy the sound of whatever you are listening to. So I think in order to get to that middle thing, we actually need to allow the natural order of things to happen. And in order to do this, we need to work on ourselves, understand who we are, what our competence is. And the more we do that, the more we naturally build that kind of hierarchy, natural hierarchy that will rule and kind of help societies to flourish rather than
flourish and thrive. I agree. And I think also as we are women, I think it's important to realize that, you know, it's kind of our responsibility to, you know, support the men we are around and not try to fight them, because that's never going to work. We don't have to fight. Our, you know, biology, the nature has evolved us for us to work in harmony, not to fight. And we can only achieve good things if we embrace the harmony and if we embrace our differences and work out how to, you know, use them together, not against each other.
Yeah, and not either change it, bend it. Like if you are a man, if you are, and that's your skills, and you have, I don't know, a body that represents this, and you have certain qualities, you need to be fully a man, not halfway. And if you're a woman, you need to be fully a woman, because we need both fully as they are and not.
And they are both just as valuable. You know, that's what we need to understand, that if one of them was to disappear, there wouldn't be life, there wouldn't be anything. And to accept, you know, what we are and accept others as who they are, is the key to actually making things work, because everyone is where they need to be. It's only the confusion happens when they don't realize that.
Yeah, when they don't know. And I'm not saying that there cannot be things in between. I'm not saying that cannot be, men that are more women or women that are not men. But as far as we really, really know who we are and we really work on those skills, I think we will really have a better society.
We will. I think self-knowledge is key, understanding yourself and knowing what you are here for and trying to figure that out, and not focusing on the exterior things, but focusing on what your soul is drawing you to do, and what kind of, actions you should take will become apparent from that.
Yeah, actually, Plato, I just say this and then we can finish. But Plato talks about the just soul and the just city. And it actually starts to, in order to have a just city in terms of an efficient working city, ideal city, you need to have a just soul. It means an efficient working soul and body in order to then do that. So that would make lots of sense in this context.
Perfect, 100%.
Yes. Okay, so let's conclude our conversation. Hopefully, we brought some thoughts to people and to just maybe in a constructive way to rethink of things. And we will now bring down the blindfolds, and as negative aspects of that we were discussing about patriarchy and what's the deal with this, is that in some way it can bring rigidity and some kind of oppression and corruption, because power, as I say, corrupts. But and this is when is too much at the extreme of things, and self-knowledge is key here to avoid this to happen, and in some way needs to be balanced by a more feminine energy, but not because the masculine is to become feminine, but because the masculine needs as well the cooperation of the feminine in some way, and and the natural order of things, and how these actually have its positive aspects that maybe you want to share.
Yeah, so the positive aspects is like organizing the society and providing protection and safety, and realizing that everyone's role is valuable. There is not a role that is lesser than the other, because in order to have the whole structure, every single little piece needs to be there to hold up the structure together. So each and every role is important, and that we must honor the natural order of life and honor the fact that we are different, and honor our roles that we have been given for this life, and make the most out of them by being the best versions we can be, and also by supporting others in being the best versions they can be.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you guys, and we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you in the next one.
Yes. Bye.